Welcome back to Surprise Insights. Today, we're diving into the hidden pasts of some of history's most iconic figures. From political leaders to influential visionaries, these individuals shaped the world as we know it. But behind their public personas, many harbored dark secrets they hoped would never be uncovered. Join us as we reveal 25 historical figures with skeletons in their closets. Get ready for some shocking revelations. And as always, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video to uncover more unexpected insights. 1. Christopher Columbus. Sure, Columbus is often celebrated for his Atlantic voyages and for opening the door to European exploration, but there's a darker side to his story that often gets ignored. Let's start with what we all know. Columbus didn't discover America. The Chinese likely beat him there, the Vikings definitely did, and of course, indigenous peoples had been living there for thousands of years. His real legacy was uniting the old world and the new, but not entirely in a good way. When Columbus landed in the Caribbean in 1492, the Arawak people welcomed him with hospitality, but he responded with violence. He kidnapped them to get information about gold, tortured many, and enslaved even more, basically initiating the transatlantic slave trade. Promising riches to Spain, he unleashed a nightmare that led to the destruction of entire communities. According to Bartolomé de las Casas, over 3 million people died because of Columbus's cruelty. That's one hell of a gruesome conquest, a legacy that deserves to be remembered. 2. Albert Einstein. You know, when people mention Albert Einstein, I bet you think of the groundbreaking theories, brilliant equations, and maybe even that famous photo of him sticking his tongue out. Although Einstein is best known for breakthroughs in physics, he also had a complicated personal life that revealed a side he rarely shared. His marriage to Mileva Maric, a fellow physicist and mother of his 2 sons, fell apart partly because of Einstein's reported infidelities. Their relationship was pretty tense. He even wrote up a list of rules for Mileva to follow just to keep things together. Eventually, they divorced, and guess what? He got married to his cousin Elsa, but he didn't exactly settle down. And that's not all. His relationship with his kids, especially his son Edward, who faced schizophrenia, was terribly strained. So while Einstein's genius is clear, his personal choices weren't. 3. Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin, the iconic silent film star, was known for relationships with much younger women. At 29, he married 16-year-old Mildred Harris because she was pregnant with his child. Although Mildred landed some acting roles thanks to Chaplin, he was unsupportive and told her she had no talent. In 1924, he got Lita Grey, another 16-year-old actress from the Gold Rush, pregnant. They married but divorced 3 years later in a scandal that rocked Hollywood. Lita accused Chaplin of abuse in a detailed letter, revealing the darker side of Chaplin's personal life. 4. William Shakespeare. William Shakespeare is widely regarded as one of the greatest writers in history, but the man behind the words has a bit of a mysterious background. Many people assume Shakespeare was the true author of the plays attributed to him, but there's been ongoing debate about whether someone else wrote them. Some believe the works of Shakespeare were actually penned by Edward de Vere, the 17th Earl of Oxford, and that Shakespeare was merely a front for the true author. On top of that, Shakespeare's personal life also seems a bit odd. He married Anne Hathaway when he was 18, and she was 26, which isn't too unusual, but their relationship was distant. He left her his second-best bed in his will. Could that be a subtle sign of a strained marriage? 5. Vincent van Gogh. Vincent van Gogh's troubled life is a well-known part of his legend, but there's more to the story than just the famous ear-cutting incident. Most people believe Van Gogh cut off his own ear after a mental breakdown, but some historians suggest that the ear injury might have been self-inflicted by his friend, Paul Gauguin, during a fight between the 2 artists. Van Gogh's emotional and financial struggles were often overshadowed by his art, and he spent much of his life in poverty. After his death, he became one of the most famous and influential artists in the world, but it's almost impossible to ignore the tragic end to his life. Van Gogh's brother, Theo, passed away just 6 months after him, and his death left his wife and child in financial ruin. 6. Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe, the ultimate blonde bombshell, was more than just a sex symbol. But the behind-the-scenes truth of her life is darker and more complex than her public persona suggests. Monroe struggled with mental health issues for much of her life, spending time in psychiatric hospitals. Her marriages to famous figures like Joe DiMaggio and Arthur Miller were fraught with turmoil, and her personal relationships were just as troubled. Despite her glamorous image, she faced exploitation, abuse, and loneliness in Hollywood. Monroe's death at 36 was officially ruled as a probable suicide due to an overdose, but conspiracy theories abound. Some claim she was murdered to cover up her alleged affairs with powerful figures like President John F. Kennedy. 7. Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla is celebrated as a genius inventor, known for his groundbreaking work with electricity and electromagnetism. However, Tesla was also a recluse, living much of his life in poverty and obscurity. While his inventions were revolutionary, his obsession with his work led to personal difficulties. He had very few close relationships, and even his romantic life was marked by an unusual vow of celibacy, which he believed was necessary for his creative energy. Tesla claimed to have a psychic connection with pigeons, often feeding them in parks and even providing care for one injured bird. It's also worth noting that Tesla's rivalries with other inventors, particularly Thomas Edison, were intense, and his ideas were sometimes overshadowed by his competitors. Despite his brilliance, Tesla died in relative obscurity and poverty. 8. Adolf Hitler. It's difficult to comprehend the full horror of Adolf Hitler's legacy, but even the most shocking facts about him often go underreported. While we know him as the dictator who orchestrated the Holocaust and led Germany into World War II, many don't realize how deeply connected Hitler's views on race were to his obsession with the occult. Hitler and the Nazis embraced pseudoscience and ancient beliefs, with many key figures in the regime experimenting with dark arts and mysticism. Hitler himself is thought to have visited occult sites and even dabbled in astrology to guide his decision-making. He also had a close, if unusual, relationship with his niece, Jelly Robbel, whose mysterious death is still debated today. Some even speculate that Hitler's emotional instability and erratic behavior could have been influenced by his relationship with her. 9. Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi, the iconic leader of the Indian independence movement, is often portrayed as a figure of purity, nonviolence, and moral clarity. However, his personal life has revealed a more complicated and controversial side. Gandhi's relationship with his wife, Kasturba, was reportedly challenging. Despite being committed to his ideals of nonviolence and celibacy, Gandhi subjected his wife to years of emotional strain and even forbade her from taking any medication for health issues. Gandhi also held controversial views on race. Early in his life, during his time in South Africa, he expressed racist beliefs about black Africans, and it wasn't until later in his life that he developed a more inclusive view. Gandhi's insistence on personal purity sometimes led him to make questionable decisions, including his testing of his own chastity by sleeping next to young women. 10. Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill is remembered as a stalwart leader during World War II, but his legacy is far from unblemished. While his leadership and speeches inspired the British people during the darkest days of the war, Churchill's views on imperialism and race were problematic. He was an ardent supporter of the British Empire and is often remembered for his racist attitudes toward colonized peoples, particularly in India. Churchill believed that the British Empire was an essential force for world stability and that colonized peoples were better off under British rule. His handling of the Bengal famine in 1943, during which millions died, is often criticized as indifferent and callous, with many historians claiming that Churchill's policies exacerbated the crisis. 11. Cleopatra. Cleopatra VII, the last active ruler of the Ptolemaic Kingdom of Egypt, is often depicted in history and films as a seductive beauty, but there is far more to her story. While her relationships with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony have captured the imagination of many, Cleopatra was also a highly intelligent and politically savvy ruler. Fluent in several languages and well-educated, she was known for her strategic alliances and ability to navigate the politics of Rome. However, much of her image has been distorted by Roman propaganda, which sought to paint her as a manipulative seductress. In reality, she was a ruler who fought to maintain Egypt's independence from the growing power of Rome. Some historians also speculate that Cleopatra may have committed suicide, but the details of her death remain uncertain. 12. Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison is often hailed as the genius inventor behind the electric light bulb, but his rivalry with Nikola Tesla and his business practices were much darker than they are usually portrayed. Edison engaged in a campaign to discredit Tesla and his alternating current, AC system, even going so far as to electrocute animals to show the supposed dangers of AC. Edison was not the sole inventor of the light bulb, either. His version was just one of many, and many historians credit other inventors with much of the groundbreaking work that Edison is often given credit for. Edison also had a reputation for ruthlessly pursuing profits, sometimes at the expense of others, and was not above using underhanded tactics to secure patents and ideas. 14. Florence Nightingale. Florence Nightingale is widely considered the founder of modern nursing, but her personal life and some of her actions are not as well known. She gained fame for her role in improving sanitary conditions in hospitals during the Crimean War, which saved countless lives, but she was also a complex and often controversial figure. Nightingale had a difficult relationship with her family, and her decision to become a nurse was met with resistance from her upper-class family, who believed nursing was an inappropriate profession for a woman of her social standing. She was also known for being a perfectionist, sometimes making life difficult for her fellow nurses and demanding a level of dedication that left many exhausted. Despite her admirable contributions to healthcare, Nightingale's personal relationships and intense focus on her work led to a difficult and sometimes lonely life. 15. Anne Frank. Frank is known worldwide for her poignant diary, which chronicles her life in hiding during the Holocaust. However, there is much more to her story than the image of an innocent young girl trapped by history. Anne's diary is a powerful account of the human spirit, but she was also a young girl growing into womanhood, and her writings reveal her complex thoughts and feelings. While she is often remembered as a symbol of hope, Anne's views on race, religion, and the world were more complicated than her diaries sometimes suggest. For instance, she expressed mixed feelings about Jews who had converted to Christianity, reflecting the complex nature of identity during a time of persecution. Anne Frank's legacy is an important reminder of the brutality of war, but it's also a reminder of the complexities of identity and the human experience during such a harrowing time. 16. Henry VIII. King Henry VIII of England is best known for his 6 marriages and his role in the English Reformation, but his reign was also marked by cruelty and ruthlessness. Henry's desire for a male heir led him to break from the Catholic Church and establish the Church of England, an act that changed the course of history. His marriages, particularly the executions of 2 of his wives, Anne Boleyn and Catherine Howard, are often seen as a reflection of his tyrannical rule. Henry's reign was also marked by lavish spending and extravagant displays of power, which drained England's finances and created instability. Despite being considered a powerful king, Henry's obsession with his own legacy and his unrelenting pursuit of male heirs ultimately left a lasting scar on the English monarchy. 17. Ludwig van Beethoven. Ludwig van Beethoven is celebrated as one of the greatest composers in history, but his personal life and struggles were far from perfect. Despite being deaf for much of his life, Beethoven continued to compose some of the most groundbreaking music ever written. However, his deafness was not his only challenge. He also suffered from depression, mood swings, and a difficult relationship with his family. His social isolation and intense personality made him a complex and sometimes difficult person to be around. Beethoven's financial troubles and his struggles with the aristocracy only added to his tumultuous life. Despite all of this, his music remains timeless, and his resilience in the face of adversity is part of what makes his legacy so powerful. 18. Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, is often credited with revolutionizing the way we think about the mind, but his theories and methods are not without controversy. Freud's work on the unconscious, repression, and the Oedipus complex is foundational in modern psychology, but many of his ideas have been criticized for their lack of empirical evidence and their bias toward a male-centric view of human development. Freud's personal life also raised eyebrows. His relationships with women, particularly his close bond with his daughter Anna, were often scrutinized. While his contributions to psychology cannot be denied, his approach to human behavior is now seen by some as outdated or flawed. Freud's theories remain influential, but they are increasingly questioned in light of modern psychological research. 20. Marie Antoinette. Marie Antoinette, the Queen of France, is often depicted as the extravagant figure who said, "Let them eat cake," during a time of famine, but this famous quote is a fabrication. In reality, Marie Antoinette was vilified for her opulent lifestyle during the French Revolution, but much of the criticism she faced was based on political and social factors, rather than her actual actions. Her marriage to Louis XVI was a political alliance, and her inability to produce an heir early in the marriage led to further public scrutiny. Despite her extravagant image, Marie Antoinette was involved in charitable efforts and worked to support French craftsmanship. She was ultimately executed during the Revolution, and her legacy is more nuanced than the caricature of a callous, out-of-touch queen. 21. Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill is often remembered as one of the greatest leaders of the 20th century, particularly for his leadership during World War II. However, his legacy is much more complicated when viewed in the context of his views on empire, race, and war. Churchill was a staunch imperialist, and his policies towards British colonies were often brutal. His role in the Bengal famine of 1943, where millions of people died due to food shortages, is one of the darker chapters of his career. Churchill's views on race were also problematic. He made disparaging comments about Indians, African people, and other groups. Despite his many achievements, his imperialist policies and racial attitudes have led to growing criticism in recent years. 22. Pablo Picasso. Pablo Picasso is one of the most influential artists of the 20th century, but his personal life was as controversial as his art. Picasso's relationships with women were marked by exploitation and manipulation. He had several lovers, many of whom were young women who he often discarded once they were no longer useful to him. His marriages were troubled, and he was accused of treating his partners as objects of inspiration rather than as equals. Picasso's personality was as complex and contradictory as his work, and his art often reflected his inner turmoil. While his contributions to modern art are undeniable, his treatment of women casts a shadow over his legacy. 25. Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin is known as the father of the theory of evolution, but his personal beliefs and the controversies surrounding his ideas were far more complex than the scientific legacy he left behind. Darwin's theory of natural selection, which revolutionized biology, was initially met with resistance, particularly from religious circles. Darwin himself struggled with the implications of his theory, as it conflicted with his own religious beliefs. Throughout his life, Darwin wrestled with feelings of guilt over his ideas and the potential challenge they posed to traditional religious doctrines. Despite this, Darwin's work laid the foundation for modern evolutionary biology, and his ideas continue to influence scientific thought today. And there you have it, 25 historical figures with dark secrets that could change the way we view them. History is often written by the victors, but these stories remind us that even the most revered individuals had their own skeletons lurking in the shadows. Which secret surprised you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed this deep dive into history's hidden pasts, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more surprising insights. Like and share this video with your friends, and stay tuned for more shocking revelations.